Some of you guys think that 9mm doesn't really work in compensated handguns and that the 9mm cartridge doesn't have enough gas to work at concealed carry comp. But then there's guns like the Shadow Systems DR920P, and let me just show you what the comp does. So this is a Shadow Systems DR, and here we go. Here we go. And this is the DRP with the NATO load, same distance. Almost no damage to the target. Shadow Systems DR920P absolutely works, and I'll tell you more about it soon.
Welcome back to the Humble Marksman channel, the only gun channel on YouTube dripping with that BDE. That's right, Big Dad Energy. If you've ever seriously considered taking your elf on the shelf outside and punting him into a tree, then go ahead and hit that like button. I don't know where the elf went, buddy, but he's probably not coming back next year. I'm David, and this is the Shadow Systems DR920P. It is their compensated version of their DR920, their duty roll style pistol. It is roughly the dimension of a Glock 34 and shares holsters with a Glock 34. At this point, the compensated duty carry gun is kind of overdone and not that exciting, but this is actually kind of cool in a couple ways that aren't exactly obvious, so I'm going to share those with you guys. But first and foremost, we'll knock out the gun review stuff. I've done a couple videos on the Shadow Systems guns already, most recently the Foundation series of guns. This shares a lot of the characteristics with those guns. So check out that Foundation series video if you want more detailed information, but we'll knock out the quick gun stuff. So a Shadow Systems DR920 is basically a Glock 17 clone made in Plano, Texas. The big selling point of the top line Shadow Systems guns are their enhanced features over what would be generally a factory pistol. The biggest feature is the enhanced frames. The frames on the Shadow Systems guns are fantastic. They're almost like Velcro with how they stick in your hands when you put a good squeeze on them. The geometry of the grip tang with the trigger guard locks the gun into your hand geometrically. The shape of the trigger shoe makes a straight to the rear trigger pull very, very easy to accomplish with a compromised grip. So the guns become very easy and very shootable. Because it is a low bore axis gun, it doesn't have a lot of muzzle climb. It does dump a lot of energy from the round into your arms, but it's only a 9mm. Then pack on top of that some cool features like the spiral tin coated barrel, the window cuts in the slide. It's got the suppressor height night sights that co-witness with most optics. Really cool optic mounting system that takes most optics. And you have a value packed pistol, but now put on top of that a new design of a compensator and barrel combo, and you have the DR920P. This is where the gun becomes interesting to me because it's not what it appears. Now, most people, if they look at a gun like this, they're going to think, well, okay, that's just a screw-on compensator just like everybody else is doing, and it has one large port at the top. Yes and no. Now, I'm an open shooter in USPSA, so there's a lot of science that goes into making compensated guns work well. I'm gonna have to get a little bit technical with you guys as to why this is such a cool design for a pistol, but we'll get into that. So first and foremost, the compensator is not a screw-on compensator. The compensator is removed by knocking out a cross pin here, and then the compensator pulls straight off the barrel, which means the barrel is not threaded. So those of you bros who live in states that have threaded barrel requirements, you can still play with this gun. The next piece is, you may notice, the front sight is still affixed to the compensator. This is what's called a sight block. So those of you who are iron sight bros who still shoot iron sights, I mean, red dots are better, but if you want to shoot iron sights, that's fine. The advantage of a sight block gun is that the front sight is fixed to a less moving object than the slide, so it makes it more observable where the gun is going to land on a target when the gun is in recoil. So when you're shooting at speed, that's a nice feature, is born out of limited guns in USPSA and IPSC. But look at the size of the compensator that they've provided. The compensator has a very large single port, which is not what people traditionally do with these types of compensators. Compensators are usually one small port, and that's to maintain reliability with the factory ammo, the 115 plinking type loads, and this eventually can shoot 115 plinking loads. You will have to break in the recoil spring before it gets there. More on that in a minute. But because the comp is so large, it actually vents a good amount of gas, as you saw in the intro. And that's ultimately how a compensator works. It redirects the gas that would otherwise come out the muzzle and create recoil, making the slide run backwards. directs it up so that the muzzle stays down. There's less muzzle climb, so there's less to recover from in recoil, so you can fire follow-up shots faster. But you couldn't achieve a compensator this big to work with factory ammunition if you didn't lighten the slide. Now, if you lighten the slide on a non-compensated gun, all you're going to do is increase the amount of energy that is dumped into your arms. I have a Glock clone with a very, very light slide, and it is the harshest shooting gun that I have because it's not compensated. Now, if I were to thread on a compensator, a very aggressive compensator, and take it right to the edge to where it's just barely dribbling out brass,
DR920P, target 115 MagTech.
It becomes the softest shooting gun that I have. This gun is kind of tuned to be set up that same way because there are slide lightning cuts inside the rear of the slide, reducing the overall slide weight so that it doesn't take as much energy for the slide to move to the rear, which means you can lose more energy at the compensator. And some of you guys who watch a bunch of those ballistic gelatin blocks, I'm not talking about energy on target, I'm talking about the energy to move the recoil system. And the next bit that becomes important for something like that is going to be the recoil spring that holds the slide into lockup with the barrel. Out of the box, it's going to come with, I believe it's an 18-pound spring, but they provide a 15-pound spring in the bag. And the recoil guide rod is a captured spring, so what you end up doing is you compress the spring. You can use the takedown punch tool to capture the spring, screw off one end cap of the guide rod, swap out the new spring, screw on the end cap again, and you're set up with the 15-pound spring. And the 15-pound spring would be what I would recommend for most ammunition to become reliable. So how much of a difference does this make? Well, as mentioned, I am a USPSA competitor in open division, and I shoot a 9mm major open gun, which is basically a 9mm proof load. It has a 124 grain pill moving at about 1400 foot per second, which is massive. And for those of you following along at home, do not shoot 9 major through guns that are not built for it. They can maybe fire a few rounds, but it's not a good thing long term. That said, I did test out 9 major in this gun, and this happened.
This is my competition gun, Bull Armory Ultimate Racer. It shoots 9mm major. You can see very long rounds, basically proof loads in 9mm, but lots and lots of gas. This is what it does. Get a dot, how do we say? This is what it does with 9 major. Ready? Same 9 major used in the Shadow Systems. It's a handful, but it does it. It does it well, actually. So there you go.
So I didn't shoot a terrible amount of the ammo through this gun, but it absolutely took it. While it is not as pleasant as shooting the race gun, which is specifically built for it, it took it all the same. That does open up one criticism that I have for this pistol, which is that it has the spiral fluted barrel, which is kind of, you know, one of the trademarks of the Shadow Systems guns. For a gun that's compensated like this and could potentially be shooting heavier loads, maybe a straight-walled bull barrel would be a better option to where that becomes, you know, more robust in those kinds of loads. And just so you can see what the Shadow System shoots like against the regular DR920, the 920P is a much, much softer shooter. It is an actual fun plinking range gun.
Oh, dude, it's not even close. Like, this thing is way, way softer than the other one.
Kind of as mentioned up to now, because guns are not just like, I have this gun and I feed it all the different ammo. Guns are systems of the ammo and the way that the guns are set up. The more stuff that you optimize it for, the more sensitive the system becomes. My race gun takes very specific ammo to run perfectly, whereas this gun also takes a narrower band of ammo to run reliably. That said, I was able to get this gun to cycle all of the range loads that I happen to have in the car. It just took a break-in period of about 100 rounds of 124 NATO, and then this gun was shooting all the 115 loads that I happen to have with me at the range today.
DR920P 147, DR920P target 115 MagTech. All right, DR920 124 NATO.
So it absolutely can get there with the 15-pound spring, but just anticipate that you're just gonna need to buy some like NATO loads. 147s and stuff like that work too, but it doesn't work the comp as hard. So if you're actually selecting ammo to shoot out of this gun on a regular basis, like the best load would be like a 115 NATO load. That would be probably the best because you want the high velocity stuff, because the powder they use to get high velocity is going to have more gas, which is going to work the comp harder and make the reduction in recoil more appreciable. Loads with heavier for caliber projectiles like 147 have a faster powder that don't have as much gas, so the compensator doesn't do as much. They generally will cycle the slide more reliably because you have more mass exiting the barrel in the form of the projectile, but it's the gas that works the comp and not the projectile. So I have to say, I enjoyed the DR920P more than I anticipated to. Hell yeah.
That thing's so easy to shoot, dude.
It is a really cool gun and was very well thought out by the guys over at Shadow. So for an off-the-shelf home defense or, you know, potentially even a duty option, the guys at Shadow were saying that there are tribal police in Oklahoma that are actually carrying these as their sidearms, which I think is really cool. It's just really fun to see how race gun technology is making its way into the practical applications. I appreciate the guys at Shadow for sharing this gun with me. I really enjoyed my time with it, guys. This is a cool pistol. I appreciate you guys, and I'll catch you on the next one. Thanks, guys.